Hello, everybody. It is the Dennis and Andy show with your movie review for this week. Us going to the movies, paying for it, and taking a bullet for you. Oh, ho, ho. Could that allude to what we saw? That's
Boy,
right.
I
You
hope
saw
so.
what's that? Yeah, that's right.
Boy, I
You
hope so.
you saw the thumbnail. Last night we went and saw Reagan. That's a biopic about Ronald Reagan, starring Dennis Quaid as Reagan, Penelope Ann Miller as Nancy, and Dan Lauria as Tip O'Neill. Usually at this point, I throw it to Dennis to go, Dennis, what was the movie about? I guess I still will.
I think you should. Well, guys, this one is a little different. This one is a biopic, but it's a biopic about Ronald Reagan's life from boyhood all the way to the meat and potatoes of the movie, which really is, his presidency. But it's all about um, his fight against communism and really what cements it into it. But it's not told as a regular biopic. It's actually told through the story and the voice of Victor Petrovich, played by John Voight. So it was very interesting because this is all seen through the eyes of the Soviets of the time, and he's recanting it through it. So very interesting way to depict it.
Yeah. And, from a performance standpoint, one, it's 2 hours and 20 minutes long. It does start kind of slow because it's during his acting period. They even go back to when he was like a 10, 12-year old, and they bounce to when he was a teenager lifeguard because there's memorable stories from that. I did want to say, I was looking at the actor playing the lifeguard. His name's David Henry. I'm like, why do I recognize him? I looked him up when I got home, and he was on a show my daughter used to watch when she was younger called The Wizards of Waverly Place,
Oh yeah, my kids did too.
which also starred starting out Selena Gomez. So I thought that was pretty neat. But getting down to the main performance of Dennis Quaid as Ronald Reagan, I tell you, the best performances is when he was playing him as president. One, because Dennis is up there in age now. I don't think they had to do anything really, a lot of work to his face because he is older and such. But man, there were times where the voice was just dead on. Some of the long shots, medium long shots, you're like, oh man, he's got the look. And then even with some of the close ups, just at the right angle and stuff too, it kind of just pulled you right in. And Dennis Quaid's been around forever, ton of movies, great actor, and he just delivered a really stand up performance, I thought.
Yeah, I would agree. At first, when I heard Dennis Quaid was going to play him, I'm like, Dennis Quaid, man, he really doesn't look a lot like Reagan. And I guess you don't have to look like him. But, thanks to a little bit of Hollywood magic, they really did. And I can tell he put in a lot of effort because a lot of his mannerisms and his facial expressions and the way he smiled, and they even talk about it in the movie, his disarming personality, his disarming smile, it came across. So I thought Dennis did a great job. Penelope Ann, I thought she was great as Nancy Reagan, very
Yeah.
believable. Mena Suvari, she plays Jane Wyman, his first wife, and you know, I couldn't tell you if that was dead on, but I enjoyed her performance. And then you even move to the Russian side where you've got Robert Davi as, he plays pretty much the head of,
Brezhnev.
yeah, and that's awesome. And I recognize him right away. And I'm like, oh my God, they got the guy from, Goonies and Die Hard. And I'm like, he's so recognizable, played a great Russian on there. And of course, John Voight, the whole story is told through really his eyes, and he played an old retired KGB agent who was there for all the important things, and he's trying to relate to the new superstar, Russians who's trying to stand there and be tall and reclaim glory. Why did you fail? And it really was a great way to handle it. Now, the story itself, which you alluded to, it was a little slow in the beginning because, they're like, well, why didn't you just talk about, his years in the White House? Because his basis for what he felt was brought up as a child and was reinforced as he went into his teens and stuff like that. So they showed all of it, the family dynamics that made it, some of the family history. His dad was an alcoholic. His mom really ran the household, and how all this brought up. And then Kevin Sorbo plays his pastor, his reverend, and which was great because you got to see Ronald Reagan's faith and how that got cemented early on. So while it is slow, it really is kind of necessary.
Oh no, I agree. I'd find it hard to cut some of that stuff out. I don't know, maybe the in the editing process, not in terms of cutting things out, but I don't know.
I've heard people already saying, I don't know why they just didn't focus on the White House.
I didn't want that. This is a very important part of the movie, like you said, because you need to know the man before the White House for his motivations and stuff. And a lot of the SAG stuff with, the communism coming in back then. Yeah, it did a great job. I don't know. There were a couple lifeguard scenes. Did you need that many of the lifeguard scenes? It's little stuff like that, not necessarily the Dennis Quaid stuff. But anyhow, it was such a small point of contention. When he was in the White House, I totally forgot that he was shot so early on in his presidency. So that's one thing I forgot. I mean, obviously, I didn't forget he was shot. I was a kid. I remember it. But
and they do mention Brady and stuff in there. Hence, later on, the Brady bill and stuff. They don't go into huge detail, but I really did enjoy for those of us that are old enough. And the reason why I think we will like it better, than some people that are see it. I remember watching and living through this stuff, and and from what I remember, as even as a teen and, throughout his career and stuff like that, I really do think that they nailed a lot of the important stuff that was in there. And I will say our theater wasn't jam-packed full, but, we had some people in front of us, people behind us, and Andy and I were like the youngest ones there. So, I mean, that kind of told us that doesn't happen very often. But
that's right. They clapped. Movie was over. You heard them clapping and stuff. That was great.
It was great. And it was everybody in the theater. So I was very happy to hear that.
I thought they did a great job with the relationship between Reagan and Tip O'Neill. Dan Lauria played a great Tip O'Neill. Politics was really different back then. These guys got along. And obviously there's people in Congress and the Senate that get along from both sides, but we're talking the head of each party basically. And yeah, I could never see going by now, the president and the speaker going, let's go grab a beer at 6 o'clock at night.
Well, that's one of the things he says. He goes, until 6 p.m. because he's, telling them, and he's, wait, what are you talking about 6 p.m.? Like, are you going to bed? That's what he was thinking, and he goes, no, politics stop at 6, and then it's two Irishmen getting a beer afterwards.
Yeah. And I mean, that's how Reagan was. And, the hospital scenes with Nancy and then with Tip O'Neill, they were great. A lot of the I love they had the jelly beans out, of course. I mean, like his first day going into a cabinet meeting, right there, center of the table is this big thing of freaking jelly beans. Now, I don't know if it was there the very first day, but we all know he had a thing for jelly beans. All the stuff at the ranch, I was telling Dennis, was actually shot not just the exterior stuff at the ranch, but the interiors as well. I heard an interview with Dennis Quaid, and he said that walking into the actual house, it was like nothing was moved. It's just been maintained. It's not open to the public, but clothes are still hanging up. Everything is there the way it was. So that was great. So it wasn't a set. And obviously it ends with him and his Alzheimer's and all that. And then during the credits, you get to see, real pictures and stuff. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I
Stay
mean
stay for the
that's
end
it.
credits because it gets emotional, right? Really, right towards the end, and they do a good job of bringing everything together. And then I'll say during the negotiations, because I remember when this was going on, Oleg Krupa plays Mikhail Gorbachev, and I think he was just spot on, and their relationship.
Hey, I see what you did there. Spot on.
Exactly. Exactly. Good catch.
Yeah.
But it was great because Margaret Thatcher and him, she sets up because she wasn't a big fan at first, and he goes, you're just an American cowboy, but he goes, Gorbachev's not a typical Russian. You're not a typical American. And what did he wind up doing? They got him together, and for one of the most famous speeches in American history. It's right up there with JFK and FDR and stuff like that. And I mean, it was the climax, the culmination of all the work against communism and how important it was. It was just a really great movie. Now, one of the negatives that I am going to bring up, and there were a few spots where, obviously the actors are older actors, and when they had to play younger versions, they were caked in makeup. And sometimes it worked great, sometimes not so much. And I was like, but it was practical effects. They did have some of the CG, and most of the time it worked. But again, there were a few spots you just went, oh, and I was like, wow. So, on the technical side, it could have been
Yeah, I
better,
mean,
but it
like
wasn't bad.
yeah, and like I said in the beginning when Dennis was playing, because they basically start with Reagan when he's 35. They don't say that in the movie. Once again, I heard it in an interview. De-aging Dennis down to that. It looked just weird. And I obviously we've seen it done well, but it could be a budget thing. John Voight, when you see John Voight telling the story, you're like, yeah, that's what John Voight looks like. And then when you see him de-aged, you're like, woof, that
Yeah.
is that's just weird. So, and then Penelope Ann Miller, they didn't have to do they had to age her up more, even though she was playing. Obviously, she wasn't Nancy like 10 years younger than Reagan, so something
Yeah.
like that.
But
There was an age
she
difference, but
actually, I
point is,
thought,
I don't think they had to do any CG stuff on her for de aging because she's not that old in the first place.
yeah.
Um, so and then, there were scenes where he was on stage with Mondale, and you could tell that it was, CG, green screen, whatever. I mean, it wasn't super awful. If
But
this was an
they
action movie and it
they
was
also
that bad, I
they
would be
also
like, "Oh,
married actual footage every once
right."
in a while in there, like they had the debate with President Carter, and um they're showing the stage, and you can tell it's an actor, look pretty good, but then they cut and you're viewing through one of the camera screens, and as they zoom in on that, all of a sudden it is Carter from his actual speech in the black and white part. I was like, oh, that's actually kind of brilliant how they did that.
Yeah.
They had Ronald Reagan and Nancy boarding, Air Force One, and it was an actual scene. But for the real important stuff of the actual scenes, it is during the after credits.
Yeah, yeah. So, all right, well, let's rate this puppy. Go right ahead.
I enjoyed this one. I think Reagan was a really solid biopic. I said it was really amazing how they did it through the eyes of, um, the Russians and telling the story. Other than the few things with the special effects and stuff like that, it was a really solid, entertaining, and heartfelt movie. I'm giving it an 8.5. I thought it was surprisingly better than where I thought it was going to go with it. So kudos to him.
Yep. I am giving it an 8.0, so we were right there. Same thing. I thought the acting was great. It's a biopic, so I learned a few things I didn't know about Reagan, mostly the actor type stuff. Knew he was an actor. Didn't know he was a pitchman for Pabst Blue Ribbon, so you got to see that. Um, so yeah, I thought the performances were great. Like I said, it starts off, I thought, a little slow. The CGI in some areas was a little lackluster. If it was a video game movie or superhero movie, I'd be really pissed off. But for this, didn't bother me that much. So yeah, 8.0. Critics and
Well,
stuff.
I was going to say IMDb is a 6.5, and on it. And I know there's a lot of hatred for this movie, and because of today's hyper partisan politics, I suppose if you were a Reagan fan or you just like one side or the other, it's going to affect it. But Rotten Tomatoes, the critics hate this movie. No surprise there. Critics, Hollywood, 21% say the critics. That is ridiculous,
No,
and
that's stupid.
that tells you a lot right there. The audience score, which is usually what Andy and I fall in line with, typically we're the average Joe watching a movie, 98%. And that is already with over 2,500, which is the max that they show. The audience loved this movie, probably is like Andy and I. We like so much
Well, and
about it.
I think, like you said, so critics that go see it, most of them are probably left leaning, and most of them are probably not his fans, right? So it got a 21%. So that's 2 out of 10 people, 10 critics liked it. So you got 2 Reagan fans basically.
Well,
The
hold on the
audience,
critics. You can separate it from top critics to all critics. Top critics, the top 18 critics that are known by the tomato
yeah,
meter from them, who are the best of the best, 0%. So
of
the
course,
top critics all hate this movie, and
right.
the people love this movie. So it's very much like real life.
Yeah, and let's be honest, the people going to see it are either history people, history buffs, or Reagan, supporters and stuff, where we fall in. If you talk to somebody and they're like, I can't stand Reagan, they're not going to go see this movie. They're not going to go pay for it. A critic,
Right.
of course, sees it for free. So the 98%, yeah, once again, you got 10 people, 9 people loved it. One person was like, my spouse drugged me to it. I never liked him in the first place. So anyhow, one thing you're going to love though is Kor-Drath, The Awakening by myself and Dennis Turner. This is a 64-page graphic novel for fans of Conan, Game of Thrones, Dungeons and Dragons. We are almost at $52,000. Heck yeah, let's go. The road to 6 figures, baby. We've got lots of great goodies for you. A new Adriana t-shirt, a new game module based on the old 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons style format role-playing game. Bunch of different covers, interior pages. Guys, the link is in the description below. So go peruse it and check it out at your leisure. And if you're a toy guy, we have not an action figure, but a miniature, I should say, 2 inches for role playing, 3-inch and 5-inch, which is really detailed up nicely. So check that out. And then we also do have Kor-Drath, The Christmas Miracle. It is on Indiegogo. It totally made its funding goal. We did put it on Kickstarter because some people have their preference and platform. There's 4 backers right now, guys. We're sending the book to the printer this week. So the 4 backers, we gotta get to that $500 to fulfill it. So if you haven't backed it yet, go over here and back it. It is a 24-page children's book, perfect for early readers, or if you're a parent teaching your child how to read, drawn in a simpler style, written in an easier format for the kids. It's a nice Christmas tale featuring Kor-Drath and Adriana. There's a coloring and activity book you can also get, and there is an adult version of this book where we took out some of the kid pages and made them more adult friendly with the violence and such. So, guys, go back it here. And thank you for watching. Next week, we will have Phil Diaz on the show talking about his new project. Hojo the Mythicals is also joining us on the show, 3 p.m. on Wednesday, as always.
And our
We'll
movie
be there.
review next week is Speak No
Well,
Evil.
Speak No Evil. Exactly. I was going to say, did we want to tease that out? But
We do.
why not? Speak No Evil.
We already got our ticket. Looking forward to it.
That's right. We are. All right, guys. Until next time, thank you. Have a great weekend. Be safe out there. Bye bye, everybody.
Live long and prosper.